Okay, let's do something even prettier now. We're going to do a three-dimensional plot. MATLAB is amazing at being able to do these things very simply. It's one of the main advantages of MATLAB over some of these other languages. So the key command here is surf, which gives you a surface. Surface takes 3 arguments, x, y, and z coordinates to produce a plot. So it's very simple. But to create the x, y, and z coordinates, we're going to use a little trick. We're going to use this mesh grid command. So what mesh grid does is gives you all the x and y coordinates over a certain plane. So if I want a big list that contains all of the x and y combinations in my range, where my range is -2 to 2 with a step size of 0.2, mesh grid will provide that for me. If you imagine trying to define all of those points that you need to plot in this three-dimensional plot, you would need -2, -2. You would need -2, -1.8, -2, -1.6, -2, -1.4. And then you would also need -1.8, -2, -1.8, -1.8. You would need all of this combination of points to be able to plot every single point in your two-dimensional space. So to achieve that, we use mesh grid. So if you can experiment with this. If you type mesh grid and give it these arguments and have a look at what's put in x and y, you'll find it's every combination of x and y points that exists over this space. So now that we have all the x and y points, the only thing we need to do is assign z coordinates to those points. We need to assign a height to each one of those points. So to do that, I define a variable g. I'm going to make it this particular function. The specifics of the function aren't important except for the fact that it makes a pretty graph. So if we run g is equal to x, remember dot multiply is going to make sure we're doing things element-wise. So x multiplied element-wise by the exponential of -x squared minus y squared happens to produce this graph. We can then do surf x, y, g, so where that's the x coordinates, the y coordinates, and the z coordinates. And when you get it plotted, you should get something like this. There is a button in the toolbar which will let you do, it looks like a little square with an arrow around, which will let you rotate the plot. So feel free to play with it and rotate it and see it from all the different angles. There's like a 3D square thing with an arrow going around it, which represents rotation. Wow, I should not draw on the board. So as you can imagine, there's a whole load of options that come with this plotting as well, such as the colors we're using. It's going to automatically correlate the color with the height, which is often what we want to do. One thing I want you to make use of when you're learning about how figures work in MATLAB is the option to have MATLAB generate the code for you. So as you can see, when you're in this editor, let me just put a plot on here to make this clear. In fact, there we go. So as you've seen in here, there's a bunch of options where you can change a bunch of things and do a whole load of very powerful things. So if you wanted to save these changes and recreate the same sort of thing again and again, the key is to make sure you know the code to achieve what you're trying to achieve. So what you can do while you're learning is go to File, Generate Code. MATLAB's going to chug along a little bit. And then what it will do is pop up MATLAB code to recreate the figure you just plotted. So if I want to spin my graph and I want to learn how I have that view, I can go File, Generate Code, and then look in my code, and I see now that I have a view, and then I have an axis, and I have some coordinates here. Is to play with the visual way of editing things. Remember, to get that, you click on the arrow here, double click on the plot, adjust things the way you want them, And then you can, if that's it, you want to produce that figure, you can save that out. There is File, Save As, or Export to actually save that as different formats. You can do Save As and then save it as a bunch of image types. But to really learn the code so that you can recreate reliably the same figures again and again, you can use the generate code to have a look at the way MATLAB is achieving those things. So now I've got grids on and boxes on. And so this is the best way of learning the sort of commands you need to learn. And I can never go through every single option in a workshop of this length, but there's many, and you can probably achieve everything you want to achieve with these plotting commands. Okay. So as I say, there's this property editor where you can change all sorts of things. I do recommend exploring it. Anything that you can achieve in the property editor by clicking, you can achieve through code without opening the property editor. So any change you make there, you can put as part of your functions.